Five Nights at Freddy's is a unique phenomenon in the gaming sphere. Released in August of 2014, the last decade has seen a steady increase in popularity for the game series. You play as a security guard in a knockoff Chuck E. Cheese, where the animatronics eventually come to life and try to kill you. These animatronics are possessed by the ghosts of children who have been murdered by the depraved owner of the Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, William Afton. This franchise has spawned an unlimited supply of sequels, books, stuffed animals, pillow pets. It's a dynasty of merchandising. The game's success can largely be attributed to its popularity on YouTube. Channels like Game Theory churned out dozens of videos exploring the game's hidden lore and story, along with many Let's Players filming themselves getting fake scared at it. These videos sparked a mass interest in preteens and high schoolers who were enchanted by the game's aesthetic and dark story. This story of commercial success leads us to the topic of today's video. One aspect of FNAF's brand that I've yet to mention is its venture into the film industry. And much like the game series it was based on, its commercial success did not always translate to critical success. Although I've never been an avid fan of the series, I was fond of the first few games when they came out. The Five Nights at Freddy's 2 film did not meet my admittedly low expectations, but I saw a lot of potential in it. Today, we are going to break down what went wrong in FNAF 2, and more importantly, how it could have gone right. Although it might surprise you, Five Nights at Freddy's has a very young audience. As a result, this film is PG-13 and skirts around the more disturbing elements of the story. I understand that you don't get to choose your audience, and creator of the games, Scott Cawthon, has done a good job turning the property into a popular source of horror for preteens and high schoolers. My difficulty with this film is that it still wades into the waters of pretty mature themes, but pulls away from providing any commentary on them. The result is a very flat and uninteresting story, which does very little to communicate any semblance of a message. The main conflict of the story is that the owner of the Freddy Fazbear's restaurant, William Afton, used the establishment as a cover to commit serial killings against the local youth. The whole thing is quite disturbing on paper, as William Afton would wear the animatronic suits to lure children away from their parents. I think a PG-13 movie should definitely be allowed to explore a topic like this. And I think it's honestly a good way to scare a younger audience into being more observant of potential stranger danger in their own lives. In practice, though, the film just kind of pushes this theme to the side unless they need to mention it to further the plot. The opening scene of the film was the most compelling to me, although parts of the acting were a little bit insufferable. It follows a child at the restaurant saving another child from William Afton. She then dies in the process because no adults cared to help her. The film immediately hits the viewer with an upsetting and weighty scene, although it does very little to build off that momentum. The opening of a film should establish the themes that will be explored, but any implications of this horrific crime are largely ignored. This could have been a good moment to set up a film that explores how neglect leaves children vulnerable, as it already does the hard emotional work to establish that theme early on. The main characters of the movie are Mike and his little sister, Abby. Their brother was a victim of William Afton when they were younger. Abby struggles throughout the film because she misses the ghost children that she befriended in the first film. As a result, she is eventually tricked and put in jeopardy by a new ghost. I'm sure you can see the potential in these characters. There's a lot of fertile ground for themes about grief, loneliness, and how children respond to trauma. Instead, these topics are all treated as utilitarian devices to move the plot along. I know it may sound pretentious to criticize the FNAF movie for its lack of thematic depth, but honestly, I feel like it wouldn't have been that hard to elevate a film like this. They already had all of the tools necessary. Beyond the audience's age leading to a sort of dumbing down of the film's topics, the fan service also cheapens any tension that the plot has. Since the young fans of the game have developed a worshipful fanaticism of everything involving FNAF, the main viewer base has a lot of expectations about how the IP should be handled on the big screen. Many fans treat the lore videos and books as law, and any deviation of that could potentially inflame them. The fan service often hurt the film more than it helped. The reveal of beloved characters from the games have this overly dramatic tone to them that comes across as really tacky. The marionette's first reveal in the opening scene of the movie overshadows the emotional momentum of the scene in order to hype up the character's arrival into the FNAF cinematic universe. In the climax of the film, the protagonist calls upon the original Freddy Fazbear to help him fight the new ghost that's terrorizing him. Freddy and the gang show up with an Avengers-style hype moment, and they proceed to do WWE moves on the antagonists of the film. I get that the children watching the film were probably very excited, but watching the robots awkwardly fight each other was laughably stupid. In fact, the action across the board is very stiff and unnatural, and there's usually absolutely no tension to any of it. The campiness and stupidity of FNAF 2 is about the only thing holding it together. I can only assume the creators of the film leaned into the campiness to mask how bad the script is. This is a common mistake when adapting video games, and it's not the only one that FNAF 2 makes. To put it frankly, video game flicks have been historically awful. Many of the most infamously bad films of all time are adaptations of beloved video games. Despite the massive amount of money to be made, many film studios can simply not figure out how to adapt a video game properly. Lately, some studios have had some success in this market. The Last of Us, Fallout, Sonic, and Mario have all received popular adaptations recently. The majority of game-related adaptations remain pretty poor, though. Out-of-touch execs greenlight shows made by people who have no interest in the source material. The result is often a disappointing and cynical cash grab, like the Halo show, for example. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 sadly falls into the category of bad adaptations. Most similar failures are a result of little involvement from the source material's creator, but FNAF 2 had the opposite problem. It was written by Scott Cawthon, the man behind the games. I think this is the first major mistake that the film made. Cawthon may be able to craft a series of compelling video games, but he cannot craft a screenplay. I've never watched a film that made me feel so little before. As a result of the low-impact story where basically nothing changes throughout the course of the events, the ending made me feel genuinely empty. I stared at the credits as the TikTok meme song began playing, glass-eyed and emotionless. The FNAF games get away with a lot of cut corners, for lack of a better term. The plot is communicated through hidden mini-games and messages. The core gameplay features very little story beyond trying to survive the animatronics' assault on you. This works very well in the format of a video game. The story does enough to immerse the player in the setting, and those yearning for more plot can go watch one of the 80 game theory videos exploring it. This does not translate well to the big screen, though. The plot of the games exists to justify the setting and the characters. It doesn't serve much of a purpose beyond that. Why are there a bunch of haunted animatronics trying to kill me? I don't know, they're possessed by children that some guy killed. Why'd he do that? Because he wanted to. Just play the game. This is all well and good when the gameplay can do the heavy lifting, but the shallowness of the story is revealed when put on the big screen. The conditions mentioned thus far heavily influence the film's poor quality, but I don't think it's fair to say that this film is a total failure. Upon digging into the specifics of it, it's clear to see that there's a lot of potential to the story. As I mentioned earlier, the campiness and stupidity of the film actually makes it pretty bearable to watch. I laughed pretty regularly throughout my viewing, and had a great time watching it with my friends. Despite that, the campiness of the film feels like a concession. It feels like the creators are telling the audience, we really didn't know how to make this a good movie, so we're just gonna make you laugh at how bad it is. There were many opportunities to weave in some interesting themes that were promptly ignored by the creators. For example, the film features the son of the serial killer continuing his legacy, manipulating the ghost of his victims into committing more acts of violence for him. I could imagine a version of FNAF 2 that digs into the implications of this, exploring how violence perpetuates itself and the effect that this has on the victims of violence. The fact that the main ghost targets parents and mean teachers is a good opportunity to flesh out this potential theme. The ghosts of neglected children attacking mostly innocent authority figures practically writes itself. You could take the angle of victims of violence misdirecting their anger and continuing this cycle, or you could take the angle of reflecting on how adults could do more to protect the vulnerable children of our society. This topic is just one example of the untapped thematic potential, and it would have done wonders for this movie. There's no discernible lesson to walk away from FNAF 2 with. Things just sort of happen, and there's little reflection done throughout the film's short runtime. I don't mean to pearl clutch here, but I really think it's strange to make a movie about this topic and make literally zero effort to commentate on it in a meaningful way. I don't think that the creators of this film are bad people, and I don't think that they made this film with cynical intentions. Regardless, I think it's bad optics to make a movie about a child-murdering psycho and treat it as a fun Marvel-esque romp. It's completely okay with me to explore this topic in a PG-13 movie, but that's not what FNAF 2 does. It doesn't explore it. It just shows you the world reflected through the prism of fan service and merchandising. The film's antagonist reveals during the climax that his plan is to kill half the town. This plan has no build-up at all, and just comes across as a comically goofy motivation for a villain like him. Beyond the poor handling of heavy topics, the horror is non-existent. I wasn't expecting to get scared by this film, but it didn't even try. The FNAF games create a very strong atmosphere. The animatronics are dirty and have this surreal, uncanny quality to them. Their eyes are almost human-looking, which is something that's notably absent in the movie. The player also sees them move very infrequently, which makes their presence all the more terrifying. You never see when they move around the room, you just see their new location. Leaning into the paranormal element and allowing the animatronics to appear in random places would be way scarier than just seeing them slowly, stiffly walk around everywhere. The film decides to make the animatronics constantly well lit and in pristine condition. Even the withered, torn apart prototypes of the animatronics have this oddly clean look to them. The animatronic suits are a wonder of practical effects and are very clearly well made. But I think they just need to be obscured from view a little more at the very least. You know, dirty them up and put some shadows on them. They just look goofy walking all around and trying to pick stuff up with their imprecise giant limbs. They're not scary or imposing. They're also slow that there's no urgency when one is on screen. I burst out laughing when they're all closing in on Mike, and his response is to rip one's head off and then softly lock another one inside of a vent. There's no moment in this sequence where Mike is even remotely in danger because the animatronics never really do a good job having any sense of urgency on screen. I think the film would do a good job to slow down the pacing of the animatronic scenes a little more. I'm envisioning a surreal Lynchian tone, since I think it would match the subject well. Think wide shots of still animatronics obscured in shadow. Only their eyes move, following an unsuspecting character as they walk by. The original FNAF is carried by the animatronics' imposing, grimy, and uncanny vibe. None of those qualities are preserved in their film counterparts. My lack of fear could be attributed to the nuclear level of memeing that FNAF has received over the past decade, but I don't think that's true, because the original game still does creep me out. Here are some of the designs side by side with their game counterparts. I feel like it speaks for everything I've said thus far. The abandoned pizzeria of this film is oddly clean. There is no grime or imperfection to the long-abandoned establishment. I find it hard to believe that an abandoned, supposedly haunted building wouldn't be covered in empty alcohol containers, crude graffiti, and just general dirt. I wouldn't expect much of the arcade's merchandise to be perfectly preserved, or the water of the river ride to be anything but green and disgusting. There's no sense of decay to the setting or animatronics, something the games do a lot to make sure that you're aware of. The film really ignores building up the atmosphere in general. Much of the runtime is spent outside of the pizzeria, which doesn't help the already underwhelming antagonists. As I mentioned before, these buildings are always well lit, which completely kills the tension. There's no partially obscured animatronics, nothing hiding in the shadows, no uncertainty. The reason I'm going so hard on this film is because I could see that they had the tools to make it good. They had the budget to create these wonderful practical sets and effects. So the underwhelming use of them is fair game to me. They had the plot elements to create a compelling story and message. So I think it's fair game to demand a higher standard of that as well. Again, I acknowledge that it's somewhat pretentious to demand more of the Five Nights at Freddy's film. The games were always little more than pulpy fun, and I think most viewers didn't expect more than that going in. The film's raked in a healthy profit, and will continue to do so, as it wastes no time in setting up a sequel after the credits. I suppose my opinion matters little to the material reality of these movies, which is that they will continue to get made and most likely will continue to decline in quality despite getting bigger and bigger budgets. Despite that, I think it would be quite easy to make these films good. Like I said earlier, the creators have all the tools. This is a multi-million-dollar property, with some serious money getting thrown at it. You know the zealous fans of the series will shell out their cash at every time a new movie comes out. So why not surprise them? Why not make a film that gives them something to think about? That's all for today. I've been the Ivory Door, and I hope you have a good one.
The Ivory Door.